Hello and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. Today I was going to talk about different types of karma and how that differentiation applies or relates to Vedic astrology or Jyotish. So let's go ahead. All right. So if you're interested in more Jyotish history philosophy content, I have a growing list of a growing playlist of history and philosophy videos. And so far, I have Vedic astrology, Jyotish and the Vedas, also the six limbs or Sadanga Vedic astrology, also styles of Jyotish. So those are already up if you're interested. I have other teaching videos related to reading birth charts and things like that. So those kind of more interpretation videos or learning how to do interpretation of birth charts, those are all in my concepts playlist so that they're easy to find. All right, so the talk today is about karma and Vedic astrology. So let's talk about karma first. We're mostly going to talk about karma and then weave in some Jyotish to see where these two concepts kind of interweave. But very simply, karma is the idea that as you sow, so shall you reap. Okay. And this relates to Newton's third law of motion. So, which is more on the physics level, like for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So, whenever something is thought or said or done, there's some sort of just the energetics of that will bring back some kind of result. Okay. Even if it's not obvious, or even if it takes time to see the results. So important words to know when we talk about karma. Karma is literally an action or an act, but you can also find the word phala uh, uh, very much linked with karma. So phala is the fruit or the response, the reaction, the result. Okay, so it's kind of cause and reaction, karma, phala. Okay. Now, at least in the United States, whenever people talk about karma, what I hear is people usually talk about it as like negative karma, almost like some sort of celestial system of punishment, that sort of thing. I don't think it necessarily has to be a system of punishment. You might think of it, it's possible to think of it as like a self regulating teaching or correcting mechanism. Yeah. So, if you think of it more as like a teaching or correcting mechanism, I think it's easier to, I think, one, not get fatalistic about it, like, well, there's nothing that can be done. And we'll talk about what can and can't be done potentially with karmas, accumulated karmas. But I think people might kind of lose hope or give up. I don't know, give up trying, or just sort of what's the point? What's the use? I mean, I've seen some people that in more of a medical context, they go through some really serious medical situation, like emergency, and then it's kind of like people go two ways about it. Either they become more engaged in life and more, see life as more precious, or they're just sort of like, you know what, it could be over any minute, so let me just, blow through life, and take any and all risk, that sort of thing. So, to each their own. And the other thing too is that sometimes if people think of it as sort of a punishment system, I think some people will have the tendency to be very self-critical and self-condemning. Um, and so that, I think, to avoid that, I mean, yeah, if we do kind of take on this notion, take on this concept, take on this paradigm of kind of philosophy about the world and how it operates. Um, if we feel like, oh, I'm not getting good results in my life because I've created some sort of bad karmas previously, um, it's like some people can just beat themselves up about it, and never get beyond what's already happened and move into some new way of being, thinking, speaking that's going to be more productive, as much as that can, create different effects if that's possible. And we'll talk about that as well. But, at least in yoga, whenever I've heard talks, Dharma talks on yoga, or karma talks in yoga, the yoga context, we always talk about it as having intelligent regret. So intelligent regret is kind of like this acknowledgement of what's happened and that there's, the results are not happening or appearing as we would prefer them to, or as fast as we like them, or that sort of thing. But rather than get down on ourselves and beat ourselves up, and kind of, imprison ourselves or punish ourselves, it's about acknowledging and then saying, okay, that didn't work. That didn't create a great result. So what can I do differently moving forward? So I think that's a more neutral stance, and I would hope people would take a more neutral stance rather than, again, really just um, really harm themselves by sort of and creating more negative karma by being too harsh with themselves. As I think I mentioned, we just some karmas you will see an immediate reaction. Some acts you will see immediate reaction, but a lot of karmas you will not. And so there's this idea of a time delay as well with karma. And so you won't necessarily see the fruit of your action now from even like a year or two ago. But this also potentially gets into the idea that, of reincarnation, how people may have different lives. You don't have to believe in reincarnation or different lives, but if you do, then it can also be that karma's actions, if were taken in previous lifetimes, can have effects or results in this lifetime. Um, and that's the thing, is each cause creates some effects, and then those causes create more effects. So it's kind of like this ripple spreading outward. That's kind of how you can think of this karma phala thing, or balance, I guess. Or so the other thing is that since humans are not the only ones to have karmas, other animals do have karmas. But because we're more self-aware and we identify with our actions, people generate more karma than, say, your dog or your cat or your lizard. Yeah. Because they do have some self-will and they have some self-identity, but probably not as deeply ingrained as we do as humans, most humans, yeah. Other words to know that are kind of out there when people talk about karma is papa and punya. So papa is an undesirable result, and punya is a desirable result. So maybe it's papa is, for if it's undesirable, somebody who wants to be married but ends up getting divorced several times. Or punya would be somebody who has like a very happy, stable marriage. Just as an example. And the thing is that our actions and our karma depends on the balance of what they call three gunyas. And gunyas is kind of hard to translate from Sanskrit, but generally it's kind of thought of as qualities. So there are three different gunas, or qualities, and they have different kind of energies. That's how I think about them. So there's sattva, there's rajas, and there's tamas. So when somebody commits some sort of action, creates some sort of action that's sattvic, then the energy of that action, that karma, is altruistic. So how can this benefit others? And the person is also unattached to the results. So they might do different things, but they're not necessarily expecting anything back from it or expecting anything to happen with it. They're just trying to sort of, you know, generate good energy, and even that, maybe even the way I said it, it sounds like there's maybe a little bit of attachment, but they're thoughtful, and again, they're thinking about benefits, the being of a positive mind and a positive benefit. Okay, and that again, maybe there's even some judgment about that, what's positive or whatever. And then there are people who mostly create karmas with the energy of rajas. So rajas is more of like acting from passion or desire, like I want a promotion or I want a house or I want a family or that sort of thing, where there's clearly some sort of goal. Like I think especially in at least American culture, if not Western culture, and maybe global culture even now today, um, rajas is very prominent. Rajasic energy in terms of karma is like it's all about goals. Like some people will not do anything unless there is a specific goal being attained. So like, why would I waste my time and energy? Some people have that thought. Okay. And then there's tamas. So somebody who's acting from a tamasic place, this is somebody who's acting without thinking. They're not considering the repercussions of their actions towards self or others or anything else. They're just kind of going about almost like those folks that I mentioned that I've seen when they've gone through some sort of pretty serious medical emergency, and then they're just like, I'm just going to throw caution to the wind and do whatever I want and live free and all this sort of thing. Well, there are other people who go through a pretty serious, medical event, and then they're like, well, how can I help others who've gone through this? Which is a very different response, and both of those responses are going to create different karmas. Okay. Um, the other thing to know is that people who think only on the divine, people who kind of meditate on, if you want to call it God or source or nature or the source, the light, people call it different things, but it's kind of the same idea of something above all of us little humans walking around here on planet Earth. There's this idea that for those people who only think about the divine and act from that place, that they're kind of above all of the sattva, rajas, tamas stuff. And in yoga, like the Yoga Sutras, for example, they talk about Ishvara Pranidhana. So in the Yoga Sutras, they talk about the yamas and the niyamas, which are kind of like a 10-step uh, kind of guide for living daily life, like the restraints, like ahimsa, which means to not do harm. So if somebody follows ahimsa, then that will create more peace in their life. And they have to consider not only ahimsa, like towards violence towards others, but violence toward themselves. Okay, so anyway, that's one example. But so one path to becoming enlightened is to kind of follow this niyamas, and that sort of thing, that sort of daily guideline for life, spiritual life. But there's also this sort of like leaping, leaping up the ladder in one step, and the way to leap up the ladder spiritually is this Ishvara Pranidhana, where it's like you surrender your ego, you surrender your goals, you surrender your thoughts, actions to the divine, and you just let the divine kind of move you. I kind of think of like the Canada geese who fly, past my house, in the um, summer and winter when they're going back and forth from like Canada to Argentina, where they're just, I don't know what drives them. They're just fascinating for me to watch, but there's something guiding them. There's some deep instinct that they're following. And it's almost like that, where you're just, something great and mysterious sort of drives you across the world. Um, yeah, that's pretty amazing. So I imagine it's something like that. um, but so anyway, more spiritual concepts just to understand and kind of get a grip on this whole bigger notion of karma. Yeah. So there's Ishvara Pranidhana. So there are three sources of karma. Adhyatmika is the first one, which most people I think realize, which is created by self. So karma is that you create by your thoughts, your words, and your actions. So if you maybe steal office supplies from work, then maybe, somebody will end up stealing something from you at some point. There'll be a loss of some kind, like that kind of, you know, thing. It's a very simple example. Then there's Adi Bhautika, which is karma created by others. So this is an extension of the karma created by self. So Adi Bhautika is when you're involved with some kind of group, and this could even be that your family or like your country, that sort of thing. Just by being a part of that group, family, country, you are subject to or responsible for the karmas being generated by the group, family, or country. So if you have a family that's violent and even if you don't participate, maybe uh, just maybe you're the only vegetarian in your family and everybody else likes to grill on the barbecue, something like that, because care about, animal life and stuff like that. Maybe that's what drives your choices there. Um, to some extent, just by being part of a family that participates in that, some of that will generate karma for you. Okay. Now this is a little bit, this can be difficult to swallow, this concept, but there's something here. And then even country. So when countries go through different things, change of leadership, or they engage in war, or what have you, then by participating in that country, being a part of that country, some of that karma will trickle down to you. And that's why some people, when they're really deep into this whole karma thing, like they'll do things like I know this one guy, he's a Western astrologer. I used to watch his YouTube videos, and he moved to Costa Rica. And he mentioned in one of his videos the reason why he moved to Costa Rica was because he didn't feel comfortable with like the taxes that he paid to the American government being used for all these wars. Whereas in Costa Rica, like actually at some point in Costa Rica, if you've ever been, it's a lovely country. But at some point, the Costa Rica disbanded their army, and they took all the money that was getting funded into their army and they put it into like school uniforms and social programs. I think that's how it went. So Costa Rica doesn't have an army. And so he basically, by moving to Costa Rica, he is no longer participating in, or at least as directly, there's always something there, right? I mean, I think, grew up in the United States, but he is not as much at this point being affected by the karmas generated by the entity that is the United States and everybody who participates in that. And I know other people as well who, like, maybe they do pay taxes, but then they put in their tax form, and then they also write letters saying how they oppose the use of this tax money being used for war and things like that. So yeah, okay. So there's that, and then the third one is Adi Devika, which is karma created by nature or the environment. So this is also, like more than probably most people think about. But this is something like the pandemic, like the COVID pandemic that we all went through. And nature supposedly, I mean, depending on your what information you have or what you tend to believe, like some people believe it was created in a lab, but somehow, even if it was created in a lab, it got out. And it went around the globe and created havoc for people. I mean, a lot of deaths, illness, I mean, chronic illness. Some people are still dealing with long COVID, just uprooted, upended work, families, life as we knew it. And so that was like a Adidevika karma. Okay. It could also be like the environment. So if you are born in the desert, for example, and live in the desert, well, there's only, certain, that's going to, restrict a lot of choices you have. Like, I don't know, like, maybe even that would be desirable to have a water park in the desert. Like, is it actually feasible? You know, um, I don't know. So things like that, where like, it's something beyond, um, human derivation that some of these karmas are produced, like something beyond individual people and groups of people. Okay, so three sources of karma. All right, so then there are four categories of karma, and they are sanchita karma, prarabdha karma, kriyamana karma, and then agama karma. Okay, so let's go through those four. So sanchita karma is accumulated karma. So this is the sum total of all the karmas known and unknown by oneself. And this is mysterious because it simply cannot be known in its entirety what sanchita karma is for somebody. Um, Especially if you're thinking about lifetimes and things like that. It's not really possible. At least Jyotish is not capable of deriving this. What is somebody's sanchita karma? Okay, and inherent again in this idea of karma is this idea of reincarnation, but it's not necessary. However, the idea of reincarnation has been mentioned in very old texts, foundational texts, in Indian culture. So reincarnation has been mentioned in the Vedas, which are the oldest known scriptures in India, and also the Bhagavad Gita, which is a very seminal work, especially for the Hindus. And so the idea of sanchita karma, this accumulated karma, this shows up for people like why some people may have success professionally but not personally. So different karmas that they've been engaged in, different actions they've been engaged in, have produced professional success, but those same karmas or different karmas have not created personal success for them. Okay, so this gets into the idea of different karmas create different results in different areas of life. Okay, but sanchita is like whole sum total of it, big, small, known, unknown, everything. And especially because it's not entirely known what the sanchita karma is, this is sometimes considered by people to be like destiny or fate. Okay. Then there's prarabdha karma, which is actualizing karma. And this is the karma that's bearing fruit, when it's ripe in this lifetime, in its life. So, as it relates to Jyotish, this is when we, step in and analyze somebody's birth chart or do Jataka. Yeah. And so there is also this notion with prarabdha karma, when you can see in their chart that they're likely to get married and they get married, that's prarabdha karma. Okay. And this also has this notion of basically being destiny. It's not as extensive, comprehensive as sanchita karma, but these are the results that one is experiencing in this life. Okay. Then we have kriyamana karma, and these are actions that one takes now. So, especially if one hears a talk like this and one hears about this and they take this to heart and then they start, changing actions, they're motivated to change actions or something, that will potentially change the results of their karma moving forward. Okay. So, and we're not just talking actions, even though I wrote actions, but also words, because words are kind of verbal actions in a way. Yeah. So, and as this relates to Jyotish, this is when somebody casts like a prashna chart. So, a prashna chart is cast when somebody asks a question like, should I take this job or not? And then the Jyotishi, the astrologer, Vedic astrologer, will cast a chart, and then they can read the chart to determine what's the likelihood of a yes or yes or no or maybe to their question. Okay. And so that prashna chart is helping determine which action somebody should take. Also related to this is a samaya chart. So typically when we analyze birth charts, at least I always do a samaya. I always derive a samaya chart as well. So a samaya chart is a chart that you derive cast at the time that you're analyzing the native chart. Because the thing is, again, if this whole karma thing, is working for all of us here, then basically some people even believe in utero, this karma, thing is playing out. This, third law of Newton stuff is playing out. And so every year, as you say and do and think different things, that's going to shift your karma. Not all of it, but some of it. And so when you cast a samaya chart, that gives you like an update. That's like an update chart, but update of somebody's karma. So you can integrate what you see in the samaya chart to determine, like maybe there's some part of somebody's life that's like, I don't know, it could be that yes, it could be no, it could go either way. And then when you do the samaya chart, all of a sudden there's a clear yes or clear no, because their actions and words and thoughts over the years leading up have created new karmas that will shift the energy of their birth chart. Some of it, not all of it. Okay. And you can tell, like, when you do a samaya chart, you can tell if somebody's, if somebody's actions are, on the up and up and they're getting more and more positive karmas, or if they're, maybe engaged in some negative things that they're not even aware of, they may not even know, or they may not, know about karma, or, they've never heard about it, or maybe they don't, I don't know, take that seriously, or they don't think about it that much, or whatever it is, and then, they're you can see that their karma is getting worse and worse over time. So yeah, that's really interesting. But anyway, this kriyamana karma, there is clearly an exertion of free will here. So it's like, okay, I hear about karma and I decide, okay, I'm gonna test it out. Excuse me, that might be for some people. And then let's see if I have hiccups now. Hopefully they'll go away. Sorry about that. Um, so let me take a drink first. Hopefully that'll help. All right, so my karma, my hiccup karma. Um, okay, so anyway, there is clearly an exertion of free will here. So sanchita karma and prarabdha karma are basically mostly seen as destiny, although I think with prarabdha karma that can shift slightly. Sanchita karma is, it's, I don't know, maybe too vast to really be shifted. But you never know. I mean, again, it depends on somebody's, how much effort and they put into shifting their karma. People can. Um, but the exertion of free will here with the kriyamana karma is behavior modification. So some people do it through eating, like maybe they fast, or maybe they eat less processed food, or maybe they do like a sattvic diet, that sort of thing, to clean up their diet, or maybe they go vegetarian, or they stop drinking, or only eat local food, so there's less, pollution from traffic from the trucks driving food around. They can be different things, but when somebody starts to be more mindful and take actions that they believe are in alignment with who they prefer to be and the kind of results they prefer to have in their life, then that's where we get the behavior modification. This could also be something like affirmation. So that's where we're getting at the idea that karma is created not just by actions, but words and also thoughts. Because typically you can't have words and actions without the thoughts first. So actually, if we can get deep enough into somebody and help them change those mental seeds, then their words and actions generally tend to change on their own once we kind of pull up the seeds, more negative seeds, and plant more positive seeds. So even doing things like saying affirmations, some people are just like, oh, that's some sort of like new agey thing, but there is something to it. It's not an easy thing to make changes in one's life, especially if somebody has a lot of, fixed karma, which we'll talk about in the next slide. But just even the attempt to try to think on a higher level, on a more beneficial level, for self and others, to and the quality and quantity of their effort in modifying their behavior. That's all taken into account in this karma system. And then we have agama karma, which are intentions. So this is again getting at like thoughts here. So intentions to make action. So this is like dreaming and planning. So even dreaming and planning it creates karma here. And so as this relates to Jyotish, especially when we're doing muhurta, which is choosing an auspicious time for events, like choosing an auspicious time and date for a wedding or moving into a house or something like that, there's a specific intention to make that go as well as possible. Okay. And again, is that intention sattvic or rajasic? It's if you're planning and dreaming, it's not tamasic so much anymore. Probably not. But rajasic, sattvic, then you have to kind of suss that out potentially. So also with the agama karma, there's also an exertion of free will here. So you can see the first two karmas are more what people would think of destiny, and the kriyamana and the agama karmas are more where here's your opportunity to exert your free will and shift how things go moving forward. As much as they'll shift, and we'll talk about that next slide, like fixed and non-fixed karmas and stuff like that. But so with the agama karma, like this is like somebody who engages in meditation, or guided meditations, or things like that to shift the thoughts to something more positive and productive. And just that alone is going to start to shift somebody's karma. Okay, so 4 categories of karma. And then we have here finally the 3 intensities of karma. So I kind of mentioned a little bit fixed and unfixed karma. So we actually have drid karma, which is fixed karma. We have drid adridya karma, which is fixed non-fixed, and then we have adridya karma, which is non-fixed. So what are these 3 intensities of karma? Well, drid karma, fixed karma, this is something that's very difficult to change. And it might be difficult, and the karma may be great. Like it might be fantastic. Like you're destined to have a gaggle of kids, or you're destined to have a really great education, or something like that. Whereas other people might like they're not, they don't have the karma for education, that sort of thing. Okay, either way, it could go either way. It's just that no matter what you do, even if you try not to get a degree, like there may be people who just keep racking them up, that sort of thing. Um, And this is the thing too, like if you like some people who see they have difficult karmas, and they're trying to change them, but it's almost like no matter what they do, they can't make any headway because it's fixed. It's fixed right there. And the thing is, in a birth chart, what you'll see is there's what we call confluence. So confluence is when we see, like if we examine a particular area of somebody's life, and we look at from this angle, on this angle, and this chart, and this subchart, and if we almost always come up with the same thing, or more often than not, we come up with the same answer, like, okay, this is not going to happen, or it's unlikely to happen. Then that creates confluence. And so when you see a lot of confluence, it means that it's more likely that this karma is fixed. It's going to be very difficult to change, no matter how much effort you put into changing it, like doing mantras or fasting or going on pilgrimage or what have you. Okay. And that's the thing, is if the karma is fixed, there's drid karma, even if you try an upaya, which is a planetary remedy, Jyotishis will give planetary remedies to remedy, if there's a planet that's very challenged, and it's like, okay, your Venus is debilitated and combust, and you've got 3 malefics on it, and it's in a negative house, all this sort of thing. So really challenge Venus, and you're looking to create a relationship. Then they might give you an upaya for Venus, but the thing is, all those things are going on. It may be that no matter how long you chant the mantra or how many times a day, you will only get a slight modification in the results, even with prolonged effort. And this might be like years of effort and still like nada, still nothing. Okay. And the thing is, you may not see any improvement in this lifetime. Like it might take you, if the karma is that fixed, it might take you lifetimes to shift that karma. Again, if you believe in lifetimes. Yeah. Then we have drid, adridya, fixed and unfixed karma. So this is when we start to see some factors converging here, but it's kind of like maybe yes, maybe no, where it's not like totally like, okay, I'm seeing no, This is where you have some ability to potentially change the outcome, the results. And this, though, is going to require some concentrated effort, and we're talking more along the lines of like potentially months of effort. Like this is so if it takes months to change something and move in another direction, that's where we're talking about drid karma. But if you do see a different direction in half a year, then it's not drid, it's not fixed. Drid karma is like almost no matter what you try, years and years, like it's just not happening, or very little's changing. If anything, you're like, okay. So that's drid, adridya, and then we have adridya, which is non-fixed, and this is where no confluence exists. So it's kind of like an open field, a blank slate. You can create what you want. And adridya karma is very easy to fix. Like you will see results in like almost immediately, if not days. Like, um, so like, if you go to the doctor and they tell you, okay, do X, Y, Z, and you do X, Y, Z, and you get better in 3 or 4 days, that's adridya karma. But if you go to the doctor and they're like, okay, do this, do that, you go to 10, 20 doctors, they all tell you different things, stand on your head, spit jelly beans, do whatever, and you do all this and still nothing, or very little is changed, then that's a fixed karma. And if it's like, okay, start on this program and, give it a few, a month or 2 or 3, and then we'll see how you're doing. And after maybe 2 or 3 months, like, you're better, but there's still more to do. Um, so it's just going to take a little bit longer. Then that's probably like a dredgy karma. Just to give you an example of like how you can assess even through results and trying to the attempt to change results. Like you can determine to some extent fixed and non-fixed karmas and that sort of thing. The other thing to mention though is that there is something it's very critical timing. So some things may seem fixed, like maybe in a negative direction, but it's just that whatever is fixed to happen. So maybe like you're not in a relationship, you're not married or whatever, and you really want to be, and you've tried everything, on the physical level, spiritual level, everything that you can, and it hasn't changed. It might be that that's fixed and it's not destined for you. Um, but it might also be that it is destined for you and it's just not the time yet. Because again, timing is very crucial to at least Vedic astrology or Jyotish, where we can look into like the dasha or planetary sequence periods and things like that. Um, and when the subcharts, not only the natal chart, but the subcharts are going to be activated. So just consider that as well. So again, at least this is gives some hope because at least some of these karmas can be changed. It might take some effort. Um, but some of them are doable, and some of them may take a while, and some of them, again, maybe not this lifetime. That's possible as well. So, but it's not like okay, this is just your karma and go live with it. At least there's some potential amelioration here. All right, so keep that all in mind. Okie dokie. So that is different kinds of karma as it relates to Vedic astrology, Jyotish. So as always, I want to thank you for your time. And again, all of my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are in my concepts playlist. You can find them all there. I do individual birth chart readings on Zoom. If you're interested in that, you can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com for more information. I do have another YouTube channel on natural medicine, which covers other Vedic arts such as Ayurveda and yoga, as well as homeopathy and naturopathic medicine. And the name of that channel is called Nature Source Care, so that might be interesting to you as well. But as always, I hope you found this interesting and useful as you navigate the energy cycles of your life. And until the next one, take care. Namaste.